We are going to be making thumbnail sketches of your elements and designs and your theme. And so what we're going to be doing is thumbnail sketches are just small little tiny drawings that you do to kind of encapsulate ideas. A lot of times you'll do that when you're brainstorming and trying to come up with different ideas and things for different projects. So the first thing you're going to do is on your paper, you are going to divide this out. The best way to do it is if you measure ahead of time, because you're going to want 12 squares. I measured 10 by 9 just to make sure that I had the right amount. Now another thing that you want to keep in mind too is when you measure, not only are you going to mark on one side, but you mark on the other as well. And that way you can ensure that you get a straight line. Otherwise, if your lines are crooked, it's going to look kind of funny. Now normally, thumbnail sketches would be used just as, kind of like a rough draft sketch. However, what we're going to do is we're going to use them as our basic, basic ideas for our project. So this one is 10 going this way, and then this one is not quite 9, it's about 8.5. So it should work. So what you're going to do is you're going to divide it up. So you're going to want 12 squares. And so I'm just, for the sake of time, I'm just going to go through here and make some random ones, so they're not going to be perfect. And then, obviously, to do my other ones. Okay. Now, with that little extra part of your paper, I'm going to leave this up here. Now, you can make it so that your squares are smaller if you want to. You divide any way you'd like, but just so that you have a little bit of space at the top, because that's where you're going to be putting your idea for your theme. Now, each of the squares, you should have watched a video before this that went through and talked about all the elements and principles of design. So, line, shape, space. And what I do is I just write these out so that I know what they're supposed to be. Texture, then I can go variety, color. Now you can put these in any order too. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be, any specific way. So emphasis, pattern, proportion, and so on and so forth. Okay, so you'll fill out the rest of them. Now what you're going to do is you want to think of a theme. So you want to think of a really broad, generic theme that you think that you could take and change and make in a whole different variations. So mine, I chose nature as my theme on mine, but you can pick seasons. You could pick sports themes. It could be anything from people. It could be fashion. It could be, shoes. It could be pretty much anything you want. The idea, though, is to pick a theme that's really broad so that you can pick out different things of it and that you don't get bored when you're trying to fill out these squares, okay? So let's say I'll pick a theme and I'm going to pick, I'll pick sports, okay? So I'm just going to write sports up here just so that I know what that's supposed to be. Okay, now the idea is from watching the video and going through, knowing what line is, how am I going to show line with a sports theme? The hardest part is going to be able to try to figure out taking that theme and trying to push it through all of your drawings. So for example, when I think sports, one of the things I think of is a volleyball net, just because it has lines in it. So technically, I could make a volleyball net. And I would probably want to look up what it looks like, because I couldn't tell you offhand what they look like, because I don't think that's right. But, so you would do kind of like a basic sketch, right? But you'd want to add extra things to it. So otherwise people aren't going to know what this is. So maybe you do like a volleyball, and I'd have to look to see what a volleyball looks like. Right now it looks like a basketball. But I could have a volleyball. I could make the court. And then I could show that the lines are inside of there. Now, all of these are going to be colored or shaded when you're done, and also outlined. So when you have it kind of sketchy like that, you're going to want to decide. So if I'm going to actually outline this, or I am going to color it or anything like that, obviously you're going to want to make it a lot nicer. So once you have the basic sketch down, you can go over it and you can, fix it and make it so it will look nice. So that will look more like a net. Okay, so I could go through and do that. All right, the next one is, well, sports. When I think of shape, pretty much any sports ball that you use is a shape. So I could do a baseball. I could do a football. Okay, and then I could do some different shapes in there. All of those would be encapsulated in one count. Okay, the next one, space. So there's positive and negative space. So whatever my object is would be large, and then obviously would leave the background. Okay, and then I would continue on throughout all of these. Now, sports doesn't just go with the actual thing that you use for sports. It could be the clothing that you wear for sports. It could be a person playing the sport. It could be, I don't know, the food and drink that you would eat to maintain in the sport. It could be the crowd. It could be a scoreboard. So like there's a lot of different variations of things to do. So on mine, when I did nature, for line, I just did trees because I figured, oh, when you look at trees without leaves in the wintertime, it just is a lot of lines. Shape, I did a leaf and acorns. Space, I did a leaf, so that's the positive space, and then the background is the negative space. Texture, I did a squirrel to show the texture on it. Variety is just a whole bunch of different things in a picture, and obviously it's an outside landscape. Color is just a bright colored flower. Proportion is obviously large to small, so I'm showing perspective here. So obviously the big tree and to the little tree. Pattern, I did it so it looks kind of like there's a pattern with the pine, and then the pine cone has a pattern. Emphasis is obviously the inside of a flower, and so I emphasize that middle section. Unity and harmony is just kind of how everything kind of flows together. So it's still a landscape, but it's more of an abstract version. Movement is just looks like leaves kind of like blowing through the wind. And then balance, I just have, I used asymmetrical balance, so I have one large flower and one small flower. Okay, they all come together, they all stick with a theme. Now I could do different seasons, I could do, all kinds of different things. There's lots of variations. And then what I did was with the top portion of it, instead of making it so it just looked like a whole bunch of sketches, I colored everything in, and then I added kind of like the header to the top of it, and then I added some extra things to it just so it would really kind of go with the theme. So now when I look at it, not only is it thumbnail sketches that show me all of the different elements and principles of design, but it also is an actual picture within itself, and then you can use it so that if you're trying to do any other type of theme, it kind of helps you see kind of how you can work through and use all the elements and principles in that theme. So the project is, you need to have at least 12 of the elements and principles of design in thumbnail sketches. And usually if you look at thumbnail sketches, so mine are about the length of my finger, and they can be a little bit smaller if you want, but I wouldn't go much bigger than that. And then obviously it needs to have a header. You need to have them labeled however you'd like to do it. And then it can be either colored or it can be shaded in pencil. It can be with Sharpie, however you'd like to do it, just as long as it shows those variations, because otherwise it's just going to look kind of like a flat sketch.